hockey fans, and welcome to part 2 of our 4-part series looking at the great career of the one and only Ronnie franchise, or of course known by his given name, Ron Francis. If you haven't checked out part 1, the link is in the description as well as the top corner of the video, but we do cover his first 5 seasons in Hartford. He was drafted by the Whalers even though he wasn't their number 1 choice, and he was joining a team that seemed to be going nowhere. But in those 5 seasons, he has won several team accolades, been named to the All-Star game 3 times, playing in 2, and also where we left off, it was a season where he missed 27 games, but still guided the Whalers to their first playoff spot since 1980 and the first of his career, and also the team's first ever winning season since joining the NHL, and their first playoff series win on top of all that. They have built a good young crop of talent mixed in with some veterans. Ron was also named team captain that season as well, and going into 1986-87, Whaler Mania is sweeping across the New England area and all across Connecticut. Well, in addition to Captain Ron, he is surrounded by a tremendous group of young talent. Up front, you have Sylvain Turgeon, a former second overall pick, proving to be a big star at this time. Gritty forwards such as Kevin Dineen and Ray Ferraro. They've also added veteran John Anderson. Also, you have the likes of Dean Evison, Paul Ellis, Stu Gavin, and they add a lot of substance to the team as well. They had a solid penalty kill with veteran Ironman Doug Jarvis, Paul McDermott, and Dave Tippett. On defense, they've got Dave Babich, a young, still dirty Ulf Samuelsson, veteran Mike McEwen, Joel Quenneville, Sylvain Cote, Scott Kleinendorf, so whatever. And to top it off, one of the best goaltenders in the game, superstar Mike Liut. He has made a big difference, and also they have a reliable backup in Steve Weeks. Ron Francis is going into his 6th season, and at just 23 years old, you know he's just getting started at what he can do. So let's see what he has in store for this growing team. Francis got off to a good start in the 1986-87 season, where the Whalers were actually hit or miss, but they were still above 500 to end October. As Francis had 10 points in 8 games, it was a +1. Also, Sylvain Turgeon, nursing a serious injury, is going to miss at least a few months. The Whalers picked up a great deal in November, however, and our hero had 12 points in 12 games, a total of 5 2-point games, including 2 goals to end the month against defending champion Montreal Canadiens, who they seem to have the number of this season early on. The Whalers were looking sharp in December as they ended the month on 9 games above 500, and Ron was looking superb, still averaging a point a game with 15 points in 15 games, with 3 goals, 12 assists, and was a +1. But then in January, Francis had 14 points in 17 games, including a 2-goal game against Quebec. But the Whalers had a bit of a rough month, and some pointed out Francis, while playing well, wasn't playing up to his type of standards. And even though Sylvain Turgeon had returned to the lineup, the Whalers were barely hanging on to first place over the Montreal Canadiens. Francis, however, answered his naysayers with a tremendous February, and he had 14 points in 11 games. It was a +5. He began the month with a big goal and 2 assist game against Mario Lemieux and the Penguins in an 8-6 win, and ended the month with 3 assists in a huge win over division rivals, the Boston Bruins. Ron's game had been consistent all year, but he knew in order to win their first division title, he was going to have to up his game, and he did just that. The Whalers were holding first place over Montreal by 3 points heading into March, and this was a huge deal. The Whalers had never once won a division title, and since the divisional realignment during Ron's rookie year 1981-82, the Whalers, along with the Sabres, are the only 2 teams not to take the division. And the way the Whalers played this year, they looked like they wanted it bad. Despite what people think, Ron isn't playing like the quote-unquote Ron that he normally is, but this team is working together, and that is the key to make this happen. But Ron will do what he has to make it happen. And Ron would play a stretch of 5 games like few others ever would. First against the New Jersey Devils, even though Francis had a goal and an assist, the Whalers actually blew a 5-1 lead, but were still able to hold on to a point for a tie. Ronnie dominated Stevie Y in the face-off circle and had 2 assists in the first period as the Whalers took a 2-0 lead over a rising Red Wings team after 1 period. But then after the Wings cut the Whalers' lead in half in the second, Ron then scored 2 goals to give him a 4-point night, and the Whalers a 4-1 lead en route to a 5-3 win. Then came a huge divisional game against the Boston Bruins, who still had a chance to catch the Whalers, and they were led by superstar defenseman Ray Bourque, who was having a career year, and same goes for young power forward Cam Neely. The Whalers knew this was as big as it gets. The Whalers were leading 1-0 when Francis saw an open Kevin Dineen setting him up for a goal, and it's 2-0. After that, the Whalers took a 3-0 lead, and Francis and Dineen strike again, with Ronnie setting him up, 4-0 Whalers. And then 1:26 later on the power play, just 16 seconds to play in the period, Francis controls the puck, drawing the Bruins penalty killers in, allowing Turgeon to find the right spot. Ron sees him, puts the puck in the right place, 5-0 Whalers after 1 period, and he has 3 assists. Then 6:27 into the second period, Ron has his 4th helper of the game, setting up Lawless as the Whalers extend their already commanding lead to 6-0. After 2 periods, the Whalers again led 7-1. After Ray Ferraro made it 8-1, 24 seconds later, Francis found Lawless again. That's 5 assists. The crowd was buzzing, not only because they were crushing their division rivals 9-1, but their hero was playing a monster game and setting up these big goals. And that crowd with that familiar chant, Ronnie, Ronnie, Ronnie. And then with 3:57 to play on the power play, leading 9-2, the crowd stirred as Ron held the puck and found John Anderson. He scores 6 assists in one game, just one shy of an NHL record shared by, of course, the great Wayne Gretzky and Bill Taylor Sr. A monster game, a standing ovation. The chant of Ronnie once again rings loud in the whale tank as he was named the game's first star in a huge 10-2 win and gets another big ovation as they dominate the Bruins. They then encountered a powerful Philadelphia Flyers team with their rookie superstar goaltender Ron Hextall, and the Whalers won 5-3 as Francis continued to roll with a goal and an assist. They would lose to the Nordiques, however, 6-4 on the road, but the hot streak for our hero continued with 2 assists. 16 points in just 5 games. Oh, man alive. That's more than 3 points a game. Francis is named NHL Player of the Week for the first time in his career. The epic 6-assist game against the Bruins was all part of it. He's playing on a whole other level. After the game against the Nordiques, however, and after his hot streak ended, Francis was nursing some minor injuries and he'd missed 4 games. And the Whalers won 2 out of 4 in his absence, and after March 18th, the Whalers are now officially in the playoffs for the second straight year, and had a nice 7-point lead on the Montreal Canadiens for first place, but still needed to officially clinch the spot. Well, Francis returned, and the Whalers then won back-to-back games over the struggling Minnesota North Stars and the young Los Angeles Kings team. Ron's point streak hit 7 games as he had an assist in each game. In the next battle, the Whalers hosted the Edmonton Oilers, a team trying to regain the top of the mountain after unceremoniously losing it the year prior. The franchise and the Great One faced off several times. Ron had an assist, but Gretzky had 2 helpers and a 5-3 Oilers win. Also, the Whalers need to be on the lookout as the Montreal Canadiens are on a hot streak. The next game, the Whalers battled the Penguins as the magnificent Mario was next, and then, well, with the Whalers leading 4-3, with just 2:53 left, Ronnie scores a power play goal to make it 5-3. It would prove to be the game winner in a 5-4 Whalers win. In the final game of the month against the Canucks, Ronnie was a beast. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, in a 7-4 Canucks win, and his point streak hits 10 games. With 3 games to go, the Whalers just need 1 win to win their first division title, as the Habs have been rolling and are wanting to crush our hero and his teammates' dreams once again, like they did in the playoffs the year prior. Well, as luck would have it, the two would face each other on April the 1st. At the Montreal Forum, the Whalers could take it with a win or even a tie, as the Habs fans are wanting another championship, craving a whole new dynasty to begin. The game tied 1-1 in the first. With 1:12 left in the period, Ron Francis takes a great feed from Lawless and parks it past Patrick Waugh. The Whalers have a 2-1 lead after 1. And Ron Francis reaches the 30-goal mark for the second time in his career and ties his career high in single-season points with 90. However, Montreal ties in the second period and it's 2-2 after 2. Time is winding down, and even a tie again would give the Whalers a playoff spot. However, with 151, Bob Gainey keeps the Habs hopes alive as they win 3-2. The Whalers are crushed. All they need is just 1 win. They can take it still with a win at home against the New York Rangers in front of a sellout crowd. The Whalers were down 3-2 in the third, and it didn't look good. But our hero had extended his point streak to 12 games with an assist, now giving him a career-high 91 points. Turgeon tied the game, and 127 later, Ron set up Anderson on a beautiful play. 4-3 Whalers, and then 153 later, he and Timmins set up McDermott. The Hartford Whalers win the 5-3. The Civic Center roars as they are at long last Adams Division champions. Our hero comes up big with 3 assists in the win. A huge moment for a team that was once considered a joke even when after Ron arrived. The Whalers close the season with Francis being a healthy scratch in a 6-0 loss to Buffalo, where Deneen, Babbage, and Liud also sat out, but either way, they finished 43-30-7 for 93 points, their best season in franchise history, and atop their division most of all. The prognosis for the playoffs looked damn good, with our hero red hot ending the year on a 12-game point streak. Awaiting them in the playoffs is the very team they upset in a sweep last season, the Quebec Nordiques. However, this time the Whalers are the heavy favorites. The Nords had a very disappointing season with just 72 points as injury to key players were a major hindrance. They still had Peter Stastny and Michel Goulet, but Stastny missed 16 games, while Goulet had another big season with 96 points. Also, Anton Stastny was still kicking around, and Dale Hunter missed 34 games, which also didn't help, but they did acquire John Grodnick, a star forward from the Detroit Red Wings for many years. The defense did have such talents as Jeff Brown, Robert Picard, Norm Rochefort, and former Whaler Risto Siltanen. They still had a formidable goaltending duo in Mario Gosselin and Clint Malarchuk, but the latter struggled a great deal. And the first round was now best of 7 rather best of 5, so here we go. Game 1. The Civic Center is packed, which is something just a couple years earlier the Whalers couldn't say very often. It was a fight-filled game that saw combined 145 penalty minutes, and it didn't look good early, as the Nordiques held a 2-0 lead in the second period, but on the power play, Francis took control and found John Anderson, who cut the Nordiques lead in half. And then in the third period, Evason tied the game, and we're off to overtime. And 2:20 in, Paul McDermott scores. The Whalers take game 1. Game 2, the Nordiques led 2-1 after the first period, but then the Whalers took a 4-2 lead after 2, and then they led 5-2, but the Nords tried to mount a comeback, but they fell short as the Whalers hold on to win 5-4 and take a 2-0 series lead as we shift to La Belle Province. So it is happening. Game 3, the Nordiques, however, are ready, and the Whalers put on a pathetic performance in a game that featured 238 penalty minutes. The Whalers trailed 5-0 after 2 periods. Francis got the only goal for the Whalers of the game on a power play, but they lose 5-1. The Nordiques are still in this. Game 4, the penalties and fights continued. Francis didn't even have a shot on goal as the Nords were outmuscling the Whalers. Won this one 4-1. The series is tied at 2. What's going on here? Either way, the Whalers are facing a lot of harsh criticism, as our hero is as well, as the series shifts back to Hartford for Game 5. The fans of the Civic Center, however, are still psyched, but the Nords scored an early power play goal, but 2:29 later, Cote Talalis to Ronnie! It's a goal. The game is tied 1-1, and the Whalers led 3-2 after the first period as well. It was tied 3-3 by the time the third period rolled around, and then in the third, 33 seconds apart, the Nords scored 2 goals, and suddenly it was 5-3, and you could hear a pin drop in the whale tank. However, the Whalers tied it, waking the fans up, and it's again 5-5. This time is winding down with 1:07 to play! Grodnik scores his third goal of the game. The Nords had an empty netter later and win 7-5. Just like that, the Whalers' dream season is about to become a nightmare as we head back to Quebec for Game 6. And to their credit, the Whalers actually looked great in Game 6, leading 2-1 in the first period. And then it's Francis to Lawless to Deneen. He scores! 3-1 Whalers under 1. Oh, they're not gonna get upset. They're gonna avoid this. They're gonna come back. Deneen made it 4-1. But again, the Nords strike quickly and effectively 2 goals. 30 seconds apart, the Whalers lead just like that, cut to a goal. 4-3 after 2. And the Whalers officially blow the lead in the third. It's tied. We are headed to OT, and Peter Stastny puts a nail in the coffin. Nordiques win the series in 6 games. What the hell happened here? Francis wasn't terrible, but the Whalers' glorious season was now left with more questions than answers. They were expected to go far, but couldn't even get past the first round. Ron did, face his fair share of critics for his play, but really, he was far from the worst on his team. Far even worse than the worst 5. Deneen, Turgeon, Ferraro, and Anderson all played awful. Babbage and the defense were abysmal. Overall, they were just outpowered by this Quebec team. The Nords would almost pull off another upset the next round, but were beaten in 7 games by the defending champion Habs. Ron Francis had 30 goals, 63 assists for a career-high 93 points this season, and Kevin Deneen was his #1 guy, while John Anderson also proved to be a big acquisition from the prior season. He and Deneen collaborated for 45 of the team's goals one way or another, with Deneen assisting on half of Francis' 30 goals, and Francis assisting on just above half of Deneen's 40 goals that year with 21 assists. John Anderson was his #1 assist collaborator with 11, and together they worked one way or another for 33 goals. He still clicked well with Turgeon when he was healthy, as well as Ulf Samuelsson of all people, and Dave Babbage. And his 63 assists were actually tied for 5th best in the league with Doug Gilmour of the St. Louis Blues, showing that he is truly a member of the elite group of players in this league. Just look at this list, 11 players, 10 are in the Hall of Fame, and you can make an argument for Larmer. For the second time, the second straight year, Francis was involved with Hart Trophy voting, garnering 3 votes this year, coming in tied for 9th, while teammate and goaltender Mike Liu was a finalist, coming in as a second runner-up and 3rd overall in voting. A banner year for our hero. He led the Whalers to the division title, which was seen as a near impossibility not all that long ago. His 93 points was actually 11th best in the league as well, and a career high. He started the season off pretty good, but then went on that insane tear in the final stretch of the season. His 63 assists were 5th best in the league. He didn't win many team awards this year, because most of them went to Mike Liud, who had an incredible season himself. But at 24, Ron was hitting what looked to be his best years. He's also 9th in Hart Trophy voting, getting those 3 votes. It was a career high plus 11 on the season. Had 7 game winning goals for 6th best in the NHL. But their playoff disappointment in the first round exit linger as to what will happen the following season. Despite his epic season, Francis was not really in the conversation for Team Canada for the 1987 Canada Cup, but again, these tournaments cut many future Hall of Famers for crying out loud, and they must have done something right because we won a lot of them. As a matter of fact, he wasn't really being seen as a guy with enough depth to play in international hockey, however, which I think is wrong personally, as he was even passed up to play for the NHL All-Stars in Rendezvous 87 against the Sylvia national team. The Whalers, however, seemed to be almost perfect in every single way, however, as things were going pretty good there, or so it seemed. They finally have some goals up front, a formidable defense, and they have a great goaltender. Their power play and penalty kills pretty good as well, and they have a coach they respect and a brilliant GM. There is no reason why this team shouldn't be a prominent contender, and Ron was the star leading the way. And now about to enter his 7th NHL season, he hopes to shake off the disappointment of last year's playoff folly and build around the fact that they did indeed win the division last year. Well, the 1987-88 season was underway, and Ron started the month pretty good with 3 goals, 9 assists for 12 points in 10 games, and that included 5 2-point outings. The Whalers, however, were not looking so hot, starting 4-5-1. He started November, however, with a monster performance over the Nordiques in Quebec, getting a measure of revenge with 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points. The Whalers, however, were a huge disappointment. As a matter of fact, when Ron obtained his 6th career hat-trick in a 4-point night in a monster 9-1 win over Buffalo, it actually broke a 6-game winless streak for the club. He had 13 points in 12 games. December, Ron had 12 points in 14 games, but the Whalers couldn't get on a hot streak. They did improve somewhat in January, as he did have a huge 3-point night against the Penguins. But again, despite the Whalers' improvement, he was going through what a lot of them were that season. He wasn't scoring or racking up any points to the point where he was expected to, with just 10 points in 15 games. In February, he had 2 goals against Toronto, which was all part of a third-period comeback from being down 2-1 en route to a 4-2 win. This broke a 4-game losing streak, which actually led to the firing of Jack Evans. That's right, the head coach would help rebuild his team, and move many people feel once again. General Manager Emile Francis, like he's known to do in his past, panics and acts irrationally, making decisions without truly weighing the options. Larry Plow, whatever, Ron's first coach, and the man who drafted him, is back behind the bench. Ron then had a goal and 2 assists for a big 3-point night against Boston in a big win on February 23rd, including setting up Dineen brilliantly on the game-winning goal with 55 seconds left in regulation. He had 13 points in 12 games in February. Francis, to end the season in March and 2 games, of course, in April, had 16 points in 18 games and played pretty well, had a 3-point night and a loss against Calgary. The Whalers still made the playoffs, but they were a very disappointing 35-38-7 for 77 points in 4th place, still finishing over 8 points ahead of last place Quebec. And in the opening round for the Adams Division semifinal, they have to take on the Montreal Canadiens, who they lost to 2 years prior, and a team who won the Cup in '86, but now the younger players were a little older, a little wiser, and their veterans were still producing. And their 103 points was second best in the entire NHL. They were led by quite a few superstar forwards, including Stéphane Richer, veteran Bobby Smith, and Le Petit Viking Mats Naslund, as well as they had pesky playoff warrior Claude Lemieux, the man who sung Hartford's dreams 2 years prior in overtime. Also, Guy Carbonneau, Mike McPhee, Shane Corson, Brian Scrudlin, and team captain and 15-year veteran Bob Gainey rounded a very depthful team. On defense, you had emerging superstar Chris Chelios, 16-year veteran and future Hall of Famer Larry Robinson, along with Rick Green, Craig Ludwig, Peter Svoboda, and Mike Lawler, who made up a tremendous blue line core. And they were backstopped by all-star goaltender Patrick Waugh and talented backup Brian Hayward. The Habs gave up the least amount of goals in the league all year. The Whalers were hoping for a miracle. Game 1, the Montreal Forum. About 8 minutes into the game, Dineen got the puck to Francis, who set up Randy LaDouceur, I don't know, who scores, and the Whalers lead 1-0 after the first period. But Montreal took a 2-1 lead in the second and carried that into the third. The Whalers were full of fight, and our hero was showing no fear going after the puck every chance he got. And 56 seconds into the third period, Ron found an open Dave Babbage, who shot it home and tied the game. 2:14 later, Babbage shot the puck in on the power play. Ron was in the right spot. He scores a 3-point night for our hero, 3-2 lead for the Whalers, but the Habs ultimately triumphed, however, with a 4-3 win despite a huge game from Ron Francis. Game 2, down 1-0 near the midway point of the first period. Ronnie finds Lindsey Carson for a beautiful setup, and the game is tied 1-1 and eventually 2-2 after the first period. The Whalers were fighters, but the onslaught of the Habs was just getting to be too much, as they took a 4-2 lead, as Ronnie and Carson set up Kleinendorf for a goal and cut the gap to 4-3 after 2 periods, but the Habs ran away with it and triumphed 7-3. Oh boy, this is bad. Game 3, we shipped to the Whale Tank, and they actually led 2-1 during the second period, but found themselves down 4-2 after 2, as Kerry Wilson, acquired during the season, scored a goal to close the gap, and our hero and the others fought for the equalizer, but the Habs took it 4-3. The Whalers were now on the verge of being swept. Game 4, however, Hartford refuses to roll over and die. They hit a barrage of shots on Patrick Waugh, while our hero was winning key faceoffs in all zones of the ice. The Whalers led 2-1 after 1, but then the game was tied 2-2 after 2. The game went back and forth, 3-2 Whalers, 4-3 Habs, 7-4 Whalers, and a huge 7-5 win as Dave Babbage played a huge game. It's not quite over yet. Game 5 back in Montreal. Looks like the Whalers' stay of execution will likely expire, but our hero has something to say about that after making a great play, setting up Dineen for a goal in the first period to strike first, and the Whalers led 2-1 after 2. was a very intense game, battling for the puck every which way, but now with the empty net, McEwen finds Francis, who launches it into the net. Oh wow, what is happening here? The Whalers close the gap to 3-2 and head back to Hartford. Oh, here we go. Game 6, the Whalers fans are rocking once again. They believe the improbable is possible. Our hero is playing his heart out in the halves, take a 2-0 lead, however, on the strength of 2 Stefan Riche goals. In the second, Ferraro scored with 1:03 left in the frame. The Whalers tried with all their might, but the Habs defense and Hayward and net just held them back. They lose 2-1 and lose the series in 6 games. This was actually the best Francis played in any given playoff series in the last 3 seasons, and fighting the uphill climb with all his might, 7 points in 6 games, led the team with a +5. Either way, he finally proved he had what it took to play playoff hockey, even in a losing cause. The Habs would lose to eventual Cup finalist Boston, however, the next round in 5 games. Francis had 25 goals and 50 assists for 75 points. That's the second lowest mark of his career, but he still led the team. Kevin Dineen was his number 1 guy, once again to no surprise, working together one way or another for a combined 30 goals. He assisted on 17 of Dineen's 25 goals, all but 8. All but 7 of Ron's goals that year were assisted by Dineen, John Anderson, or Dave Babich, who each had 6. And he had great chemistry with all of them again this year. But the overall goal production of the Whalers was actually a huge letdown, as they scored the second least in the league, and as all those names had very disappointing seasons, as well as Sylvain Turgeon. Ron played in all 80 games, and his 75 points meant for the first time in his career he failed to average at least a point a game. But yet he still led the team in scoring for the 4th time in his career, now in his 7th season, and won more individual accolades, including his 4th 3-star award of excellence, and the fans' choice for the 4th time in his career voted him as favorite Whaler. It was a trying year for Ron and the Whalers, as it seemed everything they'd built towards and achieved the year prior was starting to crumble and fast. The Whalers went into the 1988-89 season as a team of uncertainty, and Francis was right in the middle. The disappointing play of Dineen, Turgeon, Ferraro, Anderson, and even Stu Gavin the year before was ringing through the heads of the media and the fans. Well, Gavin is actually now gone. They add prospect Scott Young to the club. Babbage, Samuelson, Cote, and Quenneville certainly showed the Whalers' defense had talent, and they added Grant Jennings to the team as Mike McEwen was out to Switzerland. Mike Lee was still seen as the team's starting goaltender, but they now had a new rookie backup in Peter Sidorkiewicz. I think I pronounced that right. Anyway, Larry Plow, whatever, is now the full-time head coach again, and Francis now faces a whole new pressure on his shoulders to get this team back to prominence. The changing landscape of the game continued as the Oilers, now 2-time champions and 4 cups in 5 years, traded the great Wayne Gretzky to LA. Starting in October, things looked pretty good. Our hero had a good start to the month. 6 goals, 6 hoppers, 12 points in 10 games, and was a +3, which included a 2-goal, 2-assist, and 4-point night. And the Whalers looked so-so overall to begin the season. And then the Whalers crumbled, and our hero had no response despite 8 assists in 13 games in November. However, he was pretty bad, -7, and he had no real stand-up performances, and the team was back to their losing ways. Ronnie Franchise, however, bounced back with an epic December. 9 goals, 10 assists for 19 points in 15 games, and a monster +6. That included a goal and 2 assists for a 3-point against the hated division rivals Buffalo in a 9-0 thrashing. He followed that up with a 2-point night against the Rangers, then another 3-point night against Calgary on the 10th. 8 points in 3 games. Then on New Year's Eve, he scored 2 goals, including the game winner midway through the 3rd period, to give the Whalers a much-needed win over the Detroit Red Wings. Despite Ronnie's great play, the rest of the team didn't seem to be responding all that much. In January, however, Ronnie Franchise continued to play his game and do as good as ever. And the Whalers started showing signs of life again. In just 12 games in January, Francis had 20 points, 6 goals and 14 assists. That included 3 assists against the Rangers as Ron continued a point streak in the month and had hit 12 games with his 7th career hat trick, plus adding 2 assists in a 5-point night. Oh man, and against the New Jersey Devils in a thrilling 8-6 win. Unfortunately, however, early in a game against lowly division rivals Quebec, Ron will get hurt and miss 11 games. The team went 5-6-0 in his absence, but when he returned to take on the powerful Pittsburgh Penguins, led by Mario Lemieux as well as Paul Coffey, Ronnie had a goal and an assist in a big 8-6 win, which began a 3-game winning streak. The hot streak would culminate in winning 5 of 6 games, including a goal and 3 assists for 4 points against Mark Messier and 2-time defending champion Edmonton. The Whalers were looking pretty solid to end the year, and Ron had another big game left in him with a goal and 2 assists and 3 points against Boston on March 22nd. He had 18 points in 19 games to end the season. The Whalers finished 37, 38, and 5 for 79 points. Again, good enough for 4th place as Quebec was abysmal, so it wasn't really hard for Hartford to grab that final playoff spot. Their opponents, once again, the Montreal Canadiens, who again had the second best record in hockey and with an even better 115 points. But we do remember the fight our hero and his team put up last year against this Montreal team in a fantastic series, not making it easy for the Habs to overcome them. Can the Whalers, who are slightly better than they were last year, once again make the Habs work for what looks easy on paper? Well, let's see. Game 1 at the Montreal Forum, our hero plays his heart out, but the Whalers are decimated easily by a score of 6-2 on the strength of a big knife of Peter Svoboda. Game 2, still at the Forum, the Whalers defense does a great job in the first period of containing the Habs and protecting rookie star goalie Peter Sidorkiewicz, and while they get some chances on Patrick Waugh, he turns them away, and after a scoreless first period, the Habs strike the rookie netminder with 3 goals and take a 3-0 lead after 2. The Whalers get 2 back, and our hero is still pointless after 2 games, and the Habs lead the series 2-0, heading to Hartford, but we've seen this before. Game 3, the Whale Tank has faith, and late in the first period, after some highly competitive action, Ron and Babbage take control of the power play, setting up Jennings, who slaps it past Hayward. The Whalers lead 1-0 after 1. The Whalers would later lead 2-0 in the second, but by the third period, the Habs led 3-2, and after the Whalers tied it, the Canadiens score with 4:32 to play, take a 4-3 lead, but 26 seconds later, Brad Shaw ties it. The Civic Center is splashing with joy out to overtime, but Stéphane Richer silences the Whalers fans and their hopes. The Habs are on the verge of a sweep like last year, but can the Whalers pull off the miracle they came close to last year? Well, the Habs led 3-1 in the third period in Game 4, and it looked all but over officially, but Babbage got to them within 1. And with 5:05 to play in regulations, Ronnie franchise sets up Brian Lawton, and we are tied after overtime again. The Whalers are pressing, but Waugh is a wall, and Russ Courtnall ends the Whalers season. It's a sweep for the powerful Habs. Ron didn't play terribly, but it was a lackluster outing for the Superstar Center, as this Habs team is just way too good. And they went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals before losing to the best team in hockey that year, the one team better than them, the Calgary Flames. Ron Francis had 29 goals and 48 assists for 77 points in 69 games, better totals than last year, as the Whalers improved their overall goal total this season from second to last to 11th best in the league among 21 teams. And Kevin Dineen is numero uno once again by far as Ron's main collaborator, as the two teamed up one way or another for 42 goals. That's more than half of Ron's points. The big stat being that Ron's 23 assists on 45 of Kevin's goals, more than half, as Dineen had a rebound year from last. Injuries to Turgeon and Anderson's lack of production saw these two step up. However, Ron also clicked with rookie Scott Young as well as Samuelson and Babbage again, and even new acquisition Brian Lawton and Norm McIver. Francis and the forwards, for the most part, were back to form, at least almost there. His 77 points in 69 games was pretty good. He also finished a +4 and got his team to the playoffs for the 4th straight season, although he didn't win any team awards this year. His popularity among the Hartford faithful was still ever present. And with big changes on the way, come new opportunities for our hero. Ron Francis was still seen as the heart and true leader of this team, and obviously some responsibility must fall on his shoulders due to the fact that he is the team's best player of why this team's had so many shortcomings the last couple seasons. But now going into a new decade, the 1989-90 season approached, the Whalers were making some big changes. Larry Plow was gone, and after being involved with the Whalers organization since their inception in the WHA in 1972, he left the team for good as an assistant general manager with the New York Rangers. Emil Francis was also gone as general manager, but became team president, and the new man in charge would be Eddie Johnstone, a former goaltender who had a good playing career. After 8 seasons in Pittsburgh, working hard to bring that team up from the brink of disaster, with the drafting of Mario Lemieux, which even he almost screwed up, he comes to Hartford, and the new coach in charge is legendary Whaler from the WHA days, Rick Lee, whatever. Anyway, he had done pretty well coaching the IHL, and also more changes on the way as John Anderson was off to Italy, and Sylvain Turgeon, who had some rough seasons lately due to both injuries and inconsistent play, was sent to the Devils for the man deemed the little ball of hate, Pat Verbeek. Verbeek was a steady goal scorer, just 25 years old, and could provide peskiness up front. In the past, he's had seasons of 35 and 46 goals, and last season had 26. The Whalers also drafted a young Czech forward, Bobby Holik. Will these changes pay off, and will our hero and his team thrive once again? Well, during the third game of the season against Quebec, the lowly Nordiques, a team I cover on this channel, ho do I ever, Ron had quite a night on October 8, 1989. The Nordiques led 3-0 early in the first period, and after a Michael Anderson goal on a power play, new arrival Verbeek set up Ronnie to score a goal to make it 3-2. Scott Young tied it, it's 3-3 after 1. In the second period, our hero took control, returning the favor to Verbeek about 4 minutes into the frame. And then later on, Ronnie makes a great individual effort. And third point, And then just over a minute later, sets up Verbeek again. A huge 4-point night. The Whalers led 6-3 after 2. Oh, but wait, we're not done. Then on the power play, Francis and Verbeek set up Todd Krieger on the power play. And with 3 seconds left, Krieger and Verbeek set up Ronnie for an empty netter. His 8th career hat trick, a 6-point night, tying a career high in single game points, which he set with a 6-assist game. To begin the season, Ron Francis had 14 points in 13 games, though Whalers were looking so-so. Ron rolled into November, staying hot, but the Whalers were not. In the month of November, he had 5 goals and 15 assists for 20 points in just 14 games. And look at these performances. November 3rd, going toe-to-toe with fellow superstar Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings, had a 3-point night, a goal and 2 assists. Wayne Gretzky, now with the Kings of course, visited the Whalers, and Ron put on their show with 3 assists and a win, and dominating these star centers in the face-off circle as well. Then he took it to former teammate from his rookie year, superstar defenseman Mark Howe and the Philadelphia Flyers with a goal and 2 assists. Then at the end of the month, it was the duo becoming the most dangerous in hockey, Hull and Oates. Brett Hull and Adam Oates and the St. Louis Blues, and the duo did damage, but not enough. Ronnie gets 3 assists, 4 3-point games in a month. Not bad at all. Our hero was on a tear even by his standards. 17 points in 12 games in December, and the Whalers themselves were somewhat decent. He took it to superstar Mario Lemieux in Pittsburgh, 2 goals, 3 assists, 5 points in an 8-4 win. He then schooled rookie Mike Modano in a 4-3 win over the Minnesota North Stars with 3 assists. And while he wasn't able to school Denny Savard, who himself had a huge night, Francis still got 3 assists and a loss to Chicago to end the month. Praise was being heaped on Ron for the season he was having. He was a favorite among hockey analysts and hockey purists, and he had another 17 points in 12 games in January. And what a way to begin the new year. And this time, got the better of Chicago with a goal and 3 assists for a 4-point night on January 27th. He had 4 2-point games aside from that as well. Also that month, with his first selection since 1986, and the first time he'd played in the game since 1985, he was in the NHL All-Star Game, his 3rd appearance and 4th selection. He notched an assist in a 12-7 win for the Wales Conference, a game known for Mario Lemieux's big 4-goal performance on a bad back. In February, Ron had 11 points in 13 games. That was his slowest month of the season, but he was also a +5. And the praise for his defensive game was making a difference for the team, and the Whalers were staying the course, but with Quebec being so awful, there was really no danger of them missing the playoffs. But come March, our hero was about to have a career month. First, 2 more big 3-point games, 2 goals and a helper against the Rangers on the 3rd, and on the 8th, the opposite, a goal and 2 helpers against a much improved Toronto Maple Leafs team. Then he had 3 assists against Fleury, Gilmore, McInnes, and Vernon, and the defending Stanley Cup champion Calgary Flames on the 17th. And then on the 21st against the Nordiques, he notched his 64th assist of this year, and also his 94th point, giving a career highs in both those marks, set back in 1986-87. And the Whalers were looking pretty good. And then a goal and 3 assists for 4 points in a huge win over the Habs on March 24th. And then another big milestone for the first time in his career, on March 31st, 1990, Ron Francis reaches the 100-point single-season mark in a win over, you guessed it, the Nordiques. The first Whaler to do this since Mike Rogers in 1981, the year prior to Ron's arrival. And then in the final game of the year, a tie with the Habs, he scored his 32nd goal of the year. What's this? Another career high! And it was the final game of the season, and he beat his personal best of 31 goals set in the season of 1982-83. That was his sophomore year. The Whalers finished 38-33-9 for a pretty impressive 85 points, 4th in the Adams, of course, and their best season since their division win in 87. Well, they're off to the playoffs, and good news! They don't have to face Montreal! Bad news is they have to face the Boston Bruins, who had the best record in the NHL with 101 points. This Bruins team was deep at all ends of the ice, led by 2 megastars, power forward Cam Neely, who notched 55 goals, and of course the league's best defenseman, winner of his 3rd Norris Trophy that year, Raymond Bourque. Joining Neely up front, you had a great setup man in Craig Janney. You also had Bob Sweeney, and the man who was drafted 1 spot ahead of our hero in 1981, Bob Carpenter, who is now a Bruin. They also had longtime Flyers All-Star Brian Propp on the team now, and also had hard-working checking and defensive forwards such as another former Flyers star, Dave Poulin, as well as Bobby Gould, Dave Christian, and John Carter. Joining Bourque on defense, you had Gary Galley, Glenn Wesley, and Don Sweeney. And in net, former Oiler All-Star Andy Moog and longtime veteran Reggie Lemelin. Even with Mike Milbury as their coach, this team actually had the makings of a champion. But despite the Whalers' lack of playoff success, they will fight. So here we go. Game 1. The first playoff meeting between these two clubs is in Boston Garden. It's a highly competitive outing. The Bruins defense is giving our hero and the gang a hard time all game long, as they only allow 17 shots at Lemlem, but they make many of them count. Nearly 6 minutes into the game, Ronnie and Patty set up Krieger, and the Whalers lead 1-0 after 1. And then early in the second, they lead 3-0. The Bruins tried to make a comeback of it, but the Whalers held on to score a big upset, 4-3. Game 2, the Garden crowd wants blood, and the Bruins make Sidorkiewicz face a barrage of shots. Our hero plays well, but the Bruins fought hard for a 3-1 win and tied the series at 1, heading to Hartford for the first time, I should say. Anyway, the Whale Tank is feeling it, and the Whalers tighten up their checking game to give City, or whatever you want to call him, or Dorky, that doesn't sound good, some breathing room. The Bruins lead 1-0 early on, but shortly after, in the power play, it's Ronnie to Bradshaw. It's a goal. The game is tied 1-1, and then the game is tied 2-2 after 2 periods. Babbage made it 3-2, and then Francis to Verbeek, 4-2 Whalers. Hartford takes it 5-3 in a 2-1 series lead. Whoa! What is happening? Game 4, the Whaler faithful is excited as the Whalers had leads at 2-0 and 4-1 after the gap was cut in half. Ronnie franchise makes it happen on his own. 5-2 Whalers after 2. My God, this is really happening. It's finally tied. The Whalers are going to blow it. They lose 6-5. 4 third period goals by the Bruins. Oh, dearie dreary. Game 5 back at the Garden, and rather than roll over and die, the Whalers actually toughened up and took it to Boston. In a game that saw a combined near 100 penalty minutes, the Bruins take the game and the lead, however, series lead I should say, 3-2. Game 6 back at Hartford, the Civic Center still believes, and after the Whalers make it 1-0 after the first, just over a minute and a half into the second, Ronnie makes some magic happen with another great individual effort. It's 2-0, but by early in the third, the Bruins have tied it. And we go to overtime, but Kevin Dineen is the hero. We are going to Game 7. But the Bruins are just too good in the end. They lead 3-0 after 2 periods. Ron scores a power play marker with 6:12 to play, but it's all for naught. The Bruins take the series in 7 games. Again, Ron played very well, but yet again the Whalers were outmatched, and they had the series in hand, but they let it fall apart. But that's not solely the fault of our hero, but the Whalers are still stuck despite their good year. Ron's career best 32 goals, career best 69 assists, and yes, career best 101 points were contributed by Pat Verbeek, the most, who proved to be a huge grab for the Whalers. 57 of Francis' 101 points, all but 44, involved Verbeek, with Coach Rick Lee, feeling the pairing with Dineen needed a shakeup. Also, this means Verbeek's 89 points saw all but 32 involving Ron. A magic duo and very underrated in the annals of hockey history. Verbeek assists on 14 of Ron's 32 goals, close to half, and Ron assisting on 25 of 44 Pat Verbeek goals, and collaborating on 18 assists on top of that. However, Ron still clicked well with Dineen, who I should note missed 13 games, as well as Scott Young and Todd Krieger also clicked very well with our hero, as did the continued chemistry with Dave Babbage. Ron's 69 assists was 7th best in the NHL for the 3rd time in his career, making the top 10 among assist leaders in the league. Just look at this list, 11 people, 9 Hall of Famers, 2 you can make an argument for. What an era! Ron's 101 points tied him for 12th best in the league as well. And you'd think with the year he had and the Whalers' slight improvement that he'd at least get a 1 vote or 2 for the Hart Trophy for League MVP, right? Well, actually, no. Even his votes to Lady Bing were disappointing. His first vote since 1983 for that award, which was given to the player who best exemplifies excellence and sportsmanship. He only got 1 damn vote. However, he did register many votes for the Selke Trophy as the league's top defensive forward. He came in 5th with an impressive 32 votes, but some thought at the very least he should have been a finalist. Despite always bolstering a strong defensive game, this is his first votes for this award. A career year for our hero. His 9th season, 27 years old, and he's at the peak of his game. Career highs in goals, assists, and points, achieving his first 100-point season, 7th in assists in the league, 12th in points, also career high plus 13 on top of that. He played in the NHL All-Star game for the 3rd time with his 4th selection. He got a vote for the Bing, but got lots of votes for the Selke as the league's top defensive forward, coming in 5th. He also cleaned up in his team awards. He was again, to no surprise, the top 3-star point getter. He was voted team MVP by the Booster Club, as well as his teammates. Despite some feeling he's still overlooked, however, he had an amazing year, which is why what would happen next season, nobody saw coming. The 1990-91 season will be Ron Francis' 10th season in the NHL. But when you have a year like he just had, you face even more pressure. And also when your team has only won one playoff series in its entire NHL history, in 11 seasons and in your 9, the team will want to make some changes. But Ron was still the guy. Fans loved him. His teammates respected him. The media loved him. And the issues the Whalers' lack of success, however, does fall on his shoulders because, be it his fault or not, because, yes, he is their best player. It's a given. So, yeah, he's going to shoulder some of the blame, and he'll gladly do that. He truly was the heart of that team from the word go. A star who flew under the radar, but didn't seem to mind. However, he wasn't the guy in the eyes of head coach Rick Lee. Also, despite rumors of heated negotiations seemingly exaggerated, Francis and GM Eddie Johnston couldn't get on the same page business-wise. Ron was in the final year of his contract, and no deal of an extension had been made. There were many reasons for the Whalers' lack of success. Players failing to develop past a certain point, rash decisions by management and several others, questionable coaching calls, and of course, questionable player development as well. But it was about to come crumbling down on our hero. The season started off pretty well for him. 3 goals and 8 assists for 11 points in 13 games, but the Whalers were not looking good as a whole, having won 4 games all month. They did improve in November as Ron had 6 goals and 2 assists for 8 points, definitely the opposite of what we're used to seeing from him, and he had a 2-goal game and a big road win over Boston. Ron played more like himself in December with 16 points in 15 games, including a goal and 2 assists for 3 points in a road win over the, Nordiques. However, Rick Lee was out of touch and completely idiotically shocked the hockey world, stripping Ron Francis of his captaincy. The move was met with a major media backlash on the coach, who felt every captain in the NHL, should be like him. Meanwhile, back in 1990, Whalers fans were angered by this as well, especially the season ticket crowd, the booster club who adored Francis. Ron himself was actually growing unhappy with the place he has called home for the last decade. The Whalers after 40 games were not all that good, simply benefiting from the fact that Quebec is again awful. That seemed to be the goal. Let's just not be as bad as Quebec. Ron continued to play up to his usual standards with 16 points in 12 games in January, the Canucks being his favorite targets both on the road and at home with 3-point games. But there was growing concern among fans with his contract status, and with his wife expecting their first child, he obviously wanted to be secure in that regard. Francis continued to figuratively spit in the face of his coach, however, as he came uncaged. 23 points, 5 goals, 18 assists in just 13 games in February. That's more than 1.5 points a game. He's still on top of things. He had a 3-point night against defending champions Edmonton Oilers, coming off their first cup without Gretzky. And then a week later, career hat trick number 9, plus 2 assists for a 5-point night against the Red Wings. And then the very next game, he had 3 assists in a loss against the Rangers. The Whalers were showing improvement, but still not all that great. On March 3rd, 1991, the Hartford Whalers hosted the Toronto Maple Leafs. Down 3-1 in the second period, Ron hit a beautiful setup for Rob Brown, who had come in from Pittsburgh. He then set up Verbeek, a man he developed tremendous chemistry with to tie the game 3-3, in what ended up being a 4-4 tie. The latter was Ron's 821st career point in the NHL, as well as his 714th game. Little did anyone know, all his last wearing a Hartford Whalers uniform. Despite being under the impression that negotiations would continue after the season, on March 4th, 1991, just before the trade deadline day, Ron Francis, along with longtime teammate and defenseman Ulf Samuelsson and another defenseman, Grant Jennings, were sent to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for defensive prospect Zarley Zalapski, right winger Jeff Parker, and superstar forward John Cullen, who was actually among the league leaders in scoring at this point. Many felt the Penguins were the ones who were nuts for making this trade, once again feeling Cullen, who, don't get me wrong, was talented, had more value than Francis. But either way, after 10 seasons, Ron Francis' time in Hartford had come to an end, leaving many fans devastated at the departure of their hero. Ron's final season in Hartford saw him score 21 goals and 55 assists for 76 points in 67 games. He again clicked very well with Pat Verbeek, as 43 of Ron's 76 points, all but 33, were with Verbeek. At the time of the trade, Verbeek had 38 goals, which means Ron assisted on 24, all but 14. Ron collaborated on 11 assists with Rob Brown, who coincidentally came in from an early season deal with Pittsburgh, where the Whalers actually gave up Scott Young. Francis was also clicking well with defensemen such as Bradshaw and veteran Doug Crossman, as Dave Babbage was actually out for the season. Also, he seemed to be gelling a bit with youngster Bobby Holik. Despite all the rough times in Hartford, he took pride in wearing the team uniform, but the writing was on the wall when he was stripped of his captaincy. Would have been interesting to see how much more he and Verbeek would have produced, but either way, his love affair with the New England area had ended in heartbreak, as he was about to embark on a new journey in Pittsburgh. Since their inception in 1967 as part of the NHL's first major expansion, the Penguins' only claim to fame as a franchise, at this point anyway, was the fact that they weren't near as bad as the California Seals, who no longer existed. Other than them, they have been the least successful of the bunch. In the 1980s, the Pens were worse than the Whalers, actually, but the world paid attention when they drafted a fella by the name of Mario Lemieux, who since his rookie year has ranked up high as with Wayne Gretzky as a generational talent. The Pens slowly improved. They acquired megastar defenseman Paul Coffey from Edmonton, but it took until Mario's fifth season for the team to make the playoffs, where they fell apart in the second round and are coming off a season where they missed the playoffs. But the Penguins made some big changes going into this season. They hired Craig Patrick as general manager, who's had great success with the New York Rangers, and they hired a new head coach, Badger Bob Johnson, one of the greatest minds in hockey, and a reason why hockey's growth in the United States was undergoing what it was. As a matter of fact, he earned the name Badger due to his time with the University of Wisconsin Badgers hockey program, which is considered one of the best in the entire country. He also had great success coaching the Calgary Flames for 5 seasons. And then Patrick made a huge signing in Joe Mullen from the Calgary Flames, who is an all-star and has deep playoff experience with the Stanley Cup ring to show for it. Speaking of rings, there was no shortage of them on a future Hall of Famer Brian Trottier, with the 4 he's won, joining the team to bring veteran leadership to the club after 15 years with the New York Islanders. He also drafted an 18-year-old kid out of Czechoslovakia named Jaromir Jagr. Also to round out forwards, you have rising stars in Mark Recchi and Kevin Stevens, as well as character players such as Bob Airey and Phil Bourque, and now Francis will be reunited with former teammate Scott Young as well. On the defense joining Coffey were new acquisitions such as grizzled veteran Gordy Roberts and all-star Larry Murphy acquired mid-season. And in net, superstar Tom Barrasso and reliable backups Frank Pietrangelo and Wendell Young. Ron was entering a whole new environment in many different ways. He was still in the Wales Conference, but moved to the 6-team Patrick Division. Also, for the last 10 years, he's been the big fish in a small pond. Now he's moving to, I guess shall we say, a big lake, where he's still a big fish, but he'd be the second center, as this water was ruled by a shark named Mario. The Penguins were 32-30-4 at the time of the trade for 68 points. Lemieux had missed 54 games, however, due to severe back issues from the prior season, meaning this will be the first year he doesn't reach 100 points in his career. The team is in third place, just a few points behind the Flyers, as the Rangers seem to be running away with the division. But let's see how our hero adjusts to this big change, and see if he can make any difference for this stagnant club. His first appearance for the Penguins was in a win over the Canucks on March 5th. Then they hosted Wayne Gretzky and the Kings on March 7th, and got another win as Ron was slowly adjusting to the lineup. Then came March 9th. The Penguins visit the Whalers. He hasn't even been gone a week and he's returning home. He gets a tremendous reception, however, from the Whalers faithful, sadly with some scattered booze in there, as some small media rumors, unfounded rumors I might add, leaked that he demanded this trade. Francis made a great setup, however, for star winger Mark Recchi for a goal. Francis' first point as a Penguin in Hartford, no less, giving them a 4-1 lead en route to a 5-2 win. Ron scored an assist in the next 2 games each, as the Penguins continued to roll. The Pens went on a 7-game unbeaten streak since acquiring Ron. After the streak ended on March 21st, they beat a collapsing Rangers club, and going into the game, Francis hadn't scored a goal in over a month since that hat-trick against the Red Wings in February. But down 4-3 in the third, his Whaler teammate along for the ride with him in Pittsburgh, Ulf Samuelsson, sends him in on goal. That's career goal 265, his first not in a Whaler uniform. The game was tied and the Pens won it in overtime. The very next game, he notched 2 assists and a loss to the Blackhawks, who were the NHL's best team statistically that year. Much like the Whalers in 1987, the Pens have never won a division title in their history, and now they have a chance as the Rangers fell apart in March and the Pens got hot at the right time. With 4 games to go, it was possible. After back-to-back wins over the Flyers and Red Wings, the Penguins clinched the Patrick Division. They finished the season 41-33-6 for 88 points, and now Francis has helped 2 teams to their first division titles in his career. After the trade, the Pens went 9-3-2. But people were still skeptical on the Penguins, and Lemieux, like Francis, has seen very little playoff success. They each have just won 1 series. but Francis has 27 games playoff experience under his belt compared to Lemieux's 11. In what would be Ron's 6th straight playoff appearance and first as a member of the Penguins, he and the Pens would face the upstart yet growing New Jersey Devils, who finished with 79 points, had their 3rd playoff berth in their lowly history. They had a plethora of talent, such as future Hall of Famer, longtime Nordique star Peter Stastny, who Ron has gone up against several times, also rising stars such as John McClain and Brendan Shanahan. The team needed more goals before the season began and got them from a man also Ron knows all too well, and probably wants to forget at times, Claude Lemieux, and the Devils' longtime fearless leader, drafted 2nd after Mario in 1984, Kirk Muller. Also depth forwards such as Laurie Boschman, Patrick Sunsterman, and Doug Brown were on the team. On defense, a rising bunch, gritty Ken Danico, durable Eric Weinrich, Bruce Driver, Alexei Kasnov, who had a huge year, and Soviet sensation Slava Fetisov. And a net, a formative duo of youngsters, Chris Tareri and Sean Burke, with great hockey mind Tom McVie guiding them behind the bench. Here we go. Game 1 at the Igloo. And it's not good. Barrasso is bombarded and the Devils are in firm control. And Tareri is fantastic in it. Our hero does not stand out at all. The Devils shock the Penguins 3-1. Game 2, our hero is relied on to play more of a checking game, and does pretty well for the most part. It's a back-and-forth battle. 1-0 Devils, 2-1 Devils, 3-2 Devils, 4-3 Pens, but that just lasts 43 seconds, and it's tied 4-4 off to overtime. But then rookie sensation Jaromir Jagr wins it for the Penguins after a near collective heart attack at the Igloo. Almost that close to going down 2-0 and going on the road, we shift to the Garden State. The Devils fans are loud and proud for Game 3, as Ron is killing it in the faceoff circle, also all over the likes of Kirk Muller. Another intense back-and-forth game, 1-0 Pens, 2-1 Pens, 3-2 Pens, but the Devils tie it with 5:14 to play on a bad penalty kill by the Penguins. But with 50 seconds left, Mark Recchi makes a great individual effort, and the Pens take the game 4-3, and the series lead 2-1. Game 4, however, is a disaster. Barrasso gets no relief, and while our hero plays okay, the fact that he has not scored a single point in the series yet is being called out by the media. The Pens lose 4-1. The series is tied as 2. We head back to Pittsburgh. Game 5, it's looking worse. The Pens are down 2-0 going into the 3rd period. Our hero needs to step up. Call, and he answers. 54 seconds into the 3rd. Recchi to Ronnie. He scores his first of the playoffs. The Civic Arena wakes up. And just under 3 minutes later, Ron sees Larry Murphy, who puts it home. What a time for Ronnie franchise to live up to his name. However, power play? And Claude Lemieux on the ice for the Devils. They score. They ice it with an empty netter. This is not good. Deja vu from 1987 for our hero. They headed into New Jersey on the verge of elimination and a big upset. Going into Game 6, Ron needs to answer the call again. It looks bad early as John McClain scores 3.5 minutes in, but Kevin Stevens scores 2 goals. The Penguins lead 2-1, and on a power play, the period winding down, Ron to Mario to Jaromir. It's a goal, 3-1, Pens after 1. Second period, then tic-tac-toe, Stevens, Recchi, Ronnie. It's a goal, 4-1 Penguins, but the Devils close the gap to 4-3. However, Pietrangelo, who got the start in this game, bars the door. The Pens hang on. We're going to the 7th game. Game 7, the Igloo is shaking. Ron is a warrior out there, but it's Yuri Hrdina and Frank Pietrangelo who are the stars. 2 goals and a 27-save shutout respectively. The Penguins win 4-0, taking the series in 7 games. In what is just the 2nd playoff series win of his career, Ron Francis' defensive game was a huge factor in this series, especially towards the end, as was his performance in Game 6 more than anything, and his hustle in Game 7 showed how bad he wanted it. Either way, our hero continues to perform well in opening rounds, but his last second-round series, he was restricted immensely and played very badly. Didn't do much of anything. But that's been a long time now. Let's see if things change. The next round, it's the Washington Capitals, who scored a minor upset over the New York Rangers. The Caps, for a while now, since the early 80s, are a team that's always been on the cusp of something big, but can never quite get there. Though they finally did reach the conference final for the first time in 1990. The team finished with 81 points, and they're under determined head coach Terry Murray. The Caps were led by superstar forward Dynamo Dino Ciccarelli, who despite injury issues all year, was healthy and good to go. Also, gritty Dale Hunter up front gave the Caps a lot of toughness, and Ron's familiar, all too familiar, with Dirty Dale from his Quebec days especially. Also, Mike Ridley, up-and-comers Michel Pavelka, Peter Bondra, and Dmitry Kristich, as well as John Druce and Kelly Miller, made up a talented bunch. Character players such as Stephen Leach, Nick Kiprios, and longtime former teammate of Ron's Dave Tippett were present. But this defense, oh my god, led by captain and their fearless, ferocious leader, Rod Langway, as well as Bob Rouse, Callie Johansson, and former Leafs All-Star Ally Afraidian, oh wait, Kevin Hatcher. Oh boy. In goal, their starter was veteran Don Beaupre, and backing him up, former Whalers All-Star and longtime teammate of Ron's, Mike Liut. The fact it took the Pens 7 games to beat the Devils, many skeptics were calling the Pens out. But here we go. Game 1 at the Igloo. Oh boy, it does not look good. Despite holding a 2-1 lead going into the third, the Pens and Pietrangelo fall apart. They drop a 4-2 loss. Our hero is a non-factor again, like he was in the first game of the prior series. Game 2 is utterly insane. Back and forth goal fest. 1-0 Caps. 2-1 Pens after 1. 3-1 Pens. 4-2. 5-3. The Pens remain in control after 2. Suddenly, 6-5 Capitals. But with 4:35 to go, Randy Gilhan ties it. We're off to OT. It's almost like deja vu here, as in danger of going down to 2-0, and then it happened. Joe Mullen tipped the puck out of his zone to Ron Francis. Ron carried it in, skating with all his might. He had a couple options. He had Paul Coffey coming in directly on his left side, but on the far left he sees Kevin Stevens going in alone on goal. He feeds it to him. He shoots and scores. Slap me silly with a spatula. A huge play. An epic win for the Penguins. Ron working his magic as the series is tight as we head to the nation's capital. Game 3, Barrasso puts on a show, and the Pens are looking great. A 3-1 win and a 2-1 series lead. Game 4, Barrasso stands on his head in a very close game until the third period, but the Pens take another 3-1 win, and they lead the series by the same score. Francis again is killing it defensively out there. Here we go. Game 5, back at the Igloo, and Ron Francis is a win away as are the Pens for their first ever conference finals appearance. And a goal by our hero as he and that amazing lineup, Mullen and Stevens, do some damage and make it 2-0 en route to a 4-1 win. We're going to the conference final. Yes, our hero again was mostly talented to play the defensive game, but that huge setup for Kevin Stevens and his famous overtime winner was something on Penguins highlight reels for many years to come. This was the turning point of the series, and any way you slice it, Ronnie franchise is making history for his new team, much like he did for his old one, but now on a higher level, as he's off to the conference final. The Pens have never been this close to the finals in their history, neither has Ron, obviously. Oh wow, this is their huge first division final win. But a familiar foe stands in the way of he and his new team. Oh, yes indeed, the Boston Bruins. A team that has grown even better than the year prior in some ways. They made it all the way to the Stanley Cup last year before losing to Edmonton. The Bruins, like the Pens, had a bit of a difficult journey as they beat Ron's former team, the Whalers, in 6, which, by the way, was it for Rick Lee as coach, and it took a grueling 7 games for the Bruins to beat the Habs. They finished with 100 points. The Bruins were favored to take this one without much difficulty, actually. Especially the fact that Paul Coffey of the Penguins was injured, and not many people were giving Pittsburgh a chance. The team hasn't changed much from the year prior, from when Ron had to face him in that epic 7-game series with the Whalers, and the outlook, again, was not positive. Game 1, we started the famed Boston Garden, and the Pens were keeping up early. It was tied 2-2 after 1, but the Bruins took control at 4-2 after 2, and a Bob Erie goal in the third period closed the gap to 4-3, but the Pens ultimately dropped this one 6-3. Only their second loss on the road in these playoffs. Game 2 would be an exciting outing. Cam Neely struck early for the Bruins, but 13 seconds later, Ronnie sets up Stevens. It's tied 1-1, and it was 2-2 after 1. The Bruins led 3-2 in the third. Recchi tied it, and with 7 minutes to play, Mario scored what looked to be the possible game winner. But with 3:11 to play, Craig Janney struck, and we're off to overtime. Who could we see our third straight Game 2 series overtime win? But the Bruins actually take it. No heroics from our hero or the Pens this time. Now time is dire. They trail 2-0 heading to the Igloo. Game 3, however, the Pens faithful believes in their boys, and our hero refuses to lose. In the first period, he assists on a Kevin Stevens goal, and in the second, gets in front of the net so Murphy can set him up a goal and a helper, and a great overall game from Ron Francis. The Pens win 4-1. They're still in this thing. Game 4 is crucial, however. In the second period, leading 1-0, Ronnie to Joey. It's a goal. The Pens lead 2-0 after 2, as Barrasso is sensational on net. Then power play as time is winding down and leading 3-1. Joe to Ron to Kev. It's a goal. Another huge game for our hero, who is also frustrating Janney in the draw. The series is tied 2-2 After back-to-back 4-1 wins, confidence is riding high, but the Pens must stay disciplined. But nobody expected what happened in Game 5 to happen at the Boston Garden, and the Bruins are absolutely humiliated. 7-2! Lemieux and Stevens are just Terminators out there. Ron plays well again. They now have a 3-2 series lead. Heading back home, our hero is just one win away from making it to the Stanley Cup Finals, the big dance. Could we even have imagined this? Game 6, the Igloo. After a scoreless first period, it looks rough in the second, and the Pens trail 2-0, but they quickly tie it. It's 2-2 after 2. Time is winding down as it's tied 3-3 late in the third, but with 4:20 to go, Mark Recchi scores! The Bruins press and press, but our heroes out there fighting for the puck, making every second the Bruins don't have it count. Time continued to tick. The net is empty. Mario scores! The Igloo's going bananas! Time ticks down. 3, 2, 1, 0. For the very first time, Ron Francis, as well as the Pittsburgh Penguins, are going to the Stanley Cup Final. They win the Wales Conference. And yes, Lemieux, Stevens, Recchi, and Barrasso are getting the majority of the credit, but Ron's performance in Games 3 and 4, and when they were down in the series 2-0, no less, deserves a lot more recognition. But no doubt his teammates recognized it. But again, Ron doesn't need his name to be in the national headlines. It's crazy to believe, however, that after all he's been through this year, even many of the things he's been through in Hartford in general, he's about to play for the very thing he has dreamed his whole life of winning, the Stanley Cup. Going into the 1990-91 season, any notion that Ron Francis, as good as he may be, would be in the Stanley Cup Final likely would have been laughed off. But then again, any notion of him being on the Pittsburgh Penguins, or for that matter even the Penguins themselves being this far, also might have been met with a few chuckles. The parallels with Ron's career, plus the teams he has played for, including these Penguins, is quite something to behold. The Pens in Hartford were also paralleled in the sense of false hope, with the wrong people running the ship, at the end of the day not making the best decisions. The Pens found their GM, they found their coach. They put the right pieces in place. Nobody knew this change would happen as quick as it did. But all we know is the Pittsburgh Penguins, a team who has been laughed at and ridiculed for years, are playing in the Stanley Cup. Ron Francis, a man part of a team who had been ridiculed quite often, finally got as good as they should have been, but just as quickly fell apart, now gets another chance in a new city. And their last obstacle would be a team that even had less odds of the Penguins being there, the Cinderella story that was the Minnesota North Stars. With all of 68 points, the Stars made the playoffs, simply not being as bad as Toronto in the North Division. But make no mistake about it, their trip there was very impressive. They shocked the NHL's best team in the league, the Chicago Blackhawks, in just 6 games, and they followed that by doing the same to Brett Hull and the St. Louis Blues in 6 games as well, the NHL's second best team. And on top of that, they eliminated the defending champion Edmonton Oilers in just 5 games, the Campbell Conference Finals, to get here. The team wasn't without talent, as they had one of the best young prospects in the game, former first overall pick Mike Modano. They also had longtime star left winger Brian Bellows. Former Flyer superstar Brian Propp is now playing his 5th Cup Final, still looking for that first ring. They have 40-goal scorer Dave Gagner and 10-year veteran superstar center Neil Broughton. You also had veteran all-star Bobby Smith, who is part of the Habs team that took out Ron's 86 Whalers. Also, Ulf Dallin, Gaetan Duchesne, and another former teammate of Ron's, Stu Gavin, and fan-favorite tough guy, Basil McRae. On defense, the very talented Mark Tenorti, along with Sean Chambers, Chris Delkus, and Jim Johnson. And in net, you had the very underrated John Casey, and backing him up, 3-time Jennings winner, Brian Hayward. And coaching them, a man who knows success in Stanley Cup Finals quite a bit in his career. Another one who Ron likely wants to forget, that'd be former Hab and Hall of Famer Bob Gainey, with his 5 Stanley Cup rings to his credit in a 16-year career. The Pens weren't taking the Stars team lightly, but our hero, Ron Francis, after 10 long, grueling, yet also highly successful years, is ready to seize this chance. These two teams both entered the NHL in the same year, 1967, but the Stars have actually seen much more success as they appeared in the Cup Final in 1981 and have made the playoffs 16 times compared to 11 for the Penguins. And here we go. Game 1, Civic Arena, the Igloo. And much like Ron's early days with the Whalers, you almost couldn't pay someone to attend a Penguins game several years ago. But now, you couldn't even pack one more person in this building. Ron is focused and dead set on winning, and the Igloo nearly exploded just 3:45 in as Ron sees longtime ally Ulf Samuelsson, who launches it for a rare goal, 1-0 Penguins. But the Stars stun the Pens, however, taking a 2-1 lead after 1. But then early in the second, while killing a penalty, Ron takes the puck and sends in Mario's shorthanded goal. He scores, waking up the Pens faithful as the game is tied 2-2, but the Stars, however, led 4-3 after 2. The Penguins trailed 5-4 in the third. They pressed and pressed, but John Casey is making some amazing saves on these star-studded Penguins players. And for the 4th straight series, the Pens drop a Game 1, hence why nobody is really panicking at this point. Game 2, the Pens are dead focused, and Barrasso is a wall, absorbing 40 shots, stopping 39 of them. As Kevin Stevens has 2 goals, it's a 4-1 win, and this series is tied as we head to the land of 1,000 lakes. Game 3 in Minnesota, the Stars fans are out tonight, and so are both teams who come out flying in fierce fashion, showing amazing competitiveness. But the Stars take it 3-1. But the Penguins now trail the series 2-1. And now it's about 50-50. Some panic has set in among the media and the fans. But then again, on the other hand, you have to remember the Devils and the Bruins series. And also, the Stars team, however, has also taken out some of the best in the league. So you could think this could go either way at this point. Game 4, the Pens regain their focus, and Stevens scores just under a minute in. And then 1:38 later, that now familiar line. Mullen, a check. Stevens, a check. Ronnie with the goal. The Penguins lead 2-0 and they lead 3-1 after 1. And Ron is just schooling young Mike Modano and not letting fellow veteran Neil Broughton get in his way. Trottier makes it 4-1, but the Stars close the gap to 4-3, but Barrasso shines. The Pens hang on and win 5-3. Oh boy, people can breathe now. The series is tied at 2. Our hero is feeling it. He is getting closer and closer. Game 5, the decibel meter at the Igloo is about to shatter, and it gets even louder early on. Mario Stevens, Recchi ×2. That's a 4-0 Penguins lead. By the second, the Stars, however, cut the gap to 4-2, but Joey to Ronnie. It's 5-2 after 2. The Pens are in cruise control. The Stars, however, catch the Pens sleeping, making it 5-4 in the third, but with 1:39 to play, Ronnie to Larry to Loney. 6-4 Penguins win. 3-2 series lead. Ron Francis is 1 win away from being immortalized as a champion. The journey our hero has been through, both good and bad, every bit of it, could all finally be worth it. If he and his new team can make it happen as we get set for Game 6 in Minnesota, history will be made. Early on, Ron is playing like a man who desires to be a champion, and the Pens as a whole are looking the same way. Power play. Ulf, shorthanded. Mario, power play. Mullen. Oh, it's 3-0 Penguins after 1. They are 1 step closer. I can't believe it. It remains that way for much of the second period until Aries scores to make it 4-0. Then, Joe Mullen to Ron Francis. He shoots and scores. Mix my coffee with Russian vodka. It's 5-0 the Penguins lead. Mullen adds another goal. 6-0 after 2. It's inevitable. Ron is feeling that championship, but he's still playing with the trademark heart. 2 more goals the Penguins add. It's 8-0. Time counts down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. After years of thriving on being the big fish in the small pond, Ron Francis swims with the sharks and also thrives. His role may have been different, but he took it on and made the most of it. He didn't whine, complain that he was no longer numero uno on a given team. He did what he always does. Took every battle head on. And now as a result, he has a championship ring on his finger. His name immortalized on hockey's holy grail, the Stanley Cup. The Pittsburgh Penguins, for the very first time, Stanley Cup champions. Ron Francis, for the very first time, Stanley Cup champion. Ron was outstanding in these finals. 6 points and a +6. It's what he has been doing in these playoffs that perhaps maybe he wasn't being utilized enough for in Hartford, as someone who is working all ends of the ice in every way. And while he has been recognized for his defensive efforts during his years in Hartford among experts, it has shown it many, many times, it seemed like he never had the right players to complement that side of himself as well. And perhaps being the top center in a weird way may have been what's held him back from being a little more dynamic. Who knows? Perhaps this role in Pittsburgh can help him contribute even more. It certainly showed as he played in all 24 playoff games, had 7 goals and 10 assists for 17 points, and his +13 was tied for 5th best in the playoffs with teammate defenseman Gordy Roberts. During his 14 regular season games with the Pens, Francis scored 2 goals and 9 assists for 11 points. Both his goals were assisted by the man who came with him in that big trade, Ulf Samuelsson, his longtime teammate. And he found instant chemistry with new line mate Kevin Stevens, as 6 of 11 of Ron's points in Pittsburgh came courtesy of him. Ron Francis came to Pittsburgh to give this team a strong, depthful second-line center, and he did just that. The Pens again went 9-3-2 upon his arrival to take their first ever division title, and proved to be the one final missing piece of the puzzle, and helped them all the way to the team's very first Stanley Cup, and proved himself that many years of having the heart of a champion paid off with him finally becoming one. Ron's 64 assists was good enough for 10th in the NHL this year, and his time again the 4th time in his career that he has made the yearly top 10 leaders in that category, and again an elite list of 8 out of these 10 men being Hall of Famers. Despite not being close to last year's mark of 32 votes for 5th place for the Selke Trophy, Ron did register 1 vote as the league's top defensive forward, tied for 21st. And so ends Ron Francis' 10th NHL season. He once again maintained that consistency, averaging more than a point a game, and again 10th in assists in the league, and was also 8th in game-winning goals with 7 on the year. He also got himself a vote for the Selke Trophy, but most of all, what began as his most trying season yet ended up culminating in his most glorious, successful moment. 17 points in 24 playoff games, tied for 5th with a +13 in the postseason, came up big when he needed to the most, and of course, yes, emphasize this, he is at last Stanley Cup champion. And this officially closes the book on his time with the Hartford Whalers. 10th season, he was the heart of the city and that team. He helped bring them from the brink, making his teammates around him work harder, be better, and in turn up his work ethic, drawing from their abilities. He took them from the basement to the playoffs to a division champion, and tried as he might to keep them going, there just wasn't enough around him to do so. He sadly didn't receive the accolades like his peers did throughout the league, and he didn't get much of a chance at international competition. However, his team and his town truly recognized him. 4 times he was the Booster Club MVP. The Whalers' main core of fans voted him that way. 4 times the entire city voted him as their favorite. His own teammates even voted him 4 times as their MVP. Not to mention a 5-time winner of the 3-Star Award of Excellence for the team with the most 3-star selection points. 3 NHL All-Star Game appearances, 1 he was selected for but didn't play in, and he did have a taste of international competition in a big way, however, with his only tournament, a silver medal for the 1985 World Ice Hockey Championship team, beating the Soviets for the first time in 24 years to Team Canada. Top 10 in assists 4 times. In total, 714 games played in Hartford, 264 goals, 557 assists, 821 points. The Whalers' all-time leading scorer still is to this day, and arguably the most popular player in their history. And that does it for part 2 of our look at the great career of Ron Francis. As the next episode, we will continue his journey in Pittsburgh. Will he have a significant impact further on building on this big year? Find out in part 3. Until next time, hit like, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Until next time, I'll see ya!